Southside Chicago was never meant for people who wanted an easy life. The buildings stood tired and worn, their walls stained with time, their hallways dim and heavy with the smell of damp air and cigarette smoke. It was the kind of place where people didn't ask questions, because knowing too much usually came with a price. For Rosalie Chin, this wasn't just a place, it was survival. She had long stopped thinking about dreams. Her life moved in shifts, mornings at a small diner, afternoons cleaning offices, nights behind the counter of a convenience store. 3 jobs, barely any sleep, and just enough money to keep her mother in a hospital bed and her younger sister out of deeper trouble caused by debts that were never hers to carry. Every day was a calculation. Every decision mattered. There was no room for weakness. That night, the cold crept in harder than usual. The wind slipped through the cracks of the building like a warning. Rosalie dropped her bag by the door, rubbing her sore wrists, ready to sit down for just a moment. Then she heard it. A cough. Dry. Heavy. Painful. From the apartment across the hall. She froze. People here learned one thing quickly: mind your own business. It kept you alive. But that sound, it didn't feel normal. It sounded like someone trying to suppress something deeper, something that hurt. She stood there for a few seconds. Then sighed. 10 minutes later, Rosalie stood in front of the opposite door, holding a simple bowl of hot porridge she had hurriedly made. It wasn't much, just rice, a little seasoning, but it was warm. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again, a little louder. I heard you coughing. I just brought something to eat. Silence. She hesitated, already turning to leave. Then the door opened. The man standing in front of her wasn't what she expected. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his face sharp and unreadable, with eyes that felt colder than the air outside. He didn't belong in a place like this. Nothing about him did. But what caught her attention most was the crutch beside him. And the way he stood, like every movement cost him something. I don't need it, he said, his voice low and firm. Rosalie blinked, a little startled, but she didn't pull the bowl back. You sound sick. Not your concern. The door began to close. Quickly, Rosalie placed the bowl on the floor right in front of him. Then, just leave it here. Eat it if you want. She didn't wait for his response. She simply turned and walked away. Inside the doorway, Tristan Wolfe stood still. His eyes dropped to the bowl. Steam still rising. Simple. Plain. No hidden meaning. And that was exactly what made him distrust it the most. Because Tristan Wolfe did not live in a world where things were given without a reason. His name carried weight across Chicago. A man who ruled the shadows, whose decisions shaped lives without hesitation. A man who had everything. Until he didn't. Now he hid in a decaying apartment, pretending to be broken, after surviving an assassination attempt planned by the one person he had trusted most. He had learned something from that. Trust meant death. And yet, a stranger had just left food at his door. No questions. No fear. No expectation. Tristan crouched slightly, picking up the bowl. Across the hall, Rosalie had already returned to her room, but she found herself glancing back at his door without realizing why. Just a feeling. Nothing more. She didn't know who he was. Didn't know what kind of man lived behind that door. And she definitely didn't know that one small act of kindness had just pulled her into a world far more dangerous than anything she had ever faced. Inside the dim room, Tristan sat down slowly, staring at the porridge for a few seconds longer. Then he took a bite. Warmth spread down his throat. Nothing special. Nothing extraordinary. But enough to make him pause. For the first time in a long time. He wasn't thinking about who might be trying to kill him. And on the other side of the wall, a girl was still fighting to survive another day. 2 people. Two completely different worlds. Separated only by a single bowl of porridge. The next night, Tristan expected nothing. That was how his world worked. Nothing came twice without a reason. And yet, when the hallway fell into its usual silence and the cold settled back into the walls, there it was again. A soft knock. He didn't move at first. Didn't answer. Didn't even breathe differently. I made a little extra. Her voice came through the door, hesitant but steady. You don't have to open. I'll just leave it here. Footsteps. Then silence. Tristan waited. 5 seconds. 10. Then he moved, slower than necessary, opening the door just enough to see. Another bowl. Still warm. Placed in the exact same spot. No trap. No one waiting. Just food. He stared at it longer this time before picking it up. Across the hall, Rosalie sat on the edge of her bed, pulling off her shoes after another endless shift. Her body ached, her eyes burned from exhaustion, but her mind kept drifting back to the man next door. Not because she was curious. Not because she expected anything. Just because she knew what it felt like to be alone. The third night, she knocked again. This time, the door opened immediately. She blinked, caught off guard. Tristan stood there, leaning slightly on the crutch, his expression as unreadable as ever. His eyes lingered on her for a second longer than before, as if trying to figure something out that didn't make sense. You always do this? He asked. Rosalie tilted her head slightly. Do what? Feed strangers. A small pause. Then she shrugged lightly. Only the ones who sound like they need it. That answer didn't fit into any pattern Tristan knew. He stepped aside. Come in. The room inside was dim, almost empty. No personal items. No signs of a life being lived, just the bare minimum. It felt temporary. Like someone passing through, not staying. Rosalie stepped in carefully, placing the bowl down on the small table. You should eat while it's still warm, she said. Tristan didn't sit right away. He watched her. The way she moved without hesitation. The way she didn't look around in fear. The way she didn't ask questions. You're not worried? He asked suddenly. Rosalie glanced back at him. About what? Coming into a stranger's place. A pause. Then she gave a small, tired smile. If I worried about everything, I wouldn't survive here. That. He understood. He sat down slowly, picking up the spoon. This time, he didn't hesitate. Rosalie leaned against the wall, arms crossed lightly, not intruding, not pushing. The silence between them wasn't awkward. Just quiet. You should see a doctor, she said after a moment. Tristan let out a faint, almost humorless breath. I've seen worse. I'm serious, she replied. That cough isn't normal. He looked at her. Really looked this time. No fear. No hidden agenda. Just concern. Why? He asked. Rosalie frowned slightly. Why what? Why are you doing this? She thought about it for a second. Not long. Just honest. Because no one did it for me when I needed it, she said simply. Silence filled the room again. But this time, it felt different. Something in Tristan shifted. Not much. Just enough. He looked down at the bowl in his hands. Then back at her. Rosalie, she added suddenly. He frowned slightly. My name, she clarified. Another pause. Tristan. The name left his mouth before he could stop it. And for a split second, he regretted it. Because names meant connection. And connection meant risk. But Rosalie just nodded, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Those words didn't belong in his world. She filled the silence with small stories, not complaints, not self-pity, just pieces of her life told the way someone tells the truth without expecting anything in return. She talked about her jobs, about her mother's condition, about how she once wanted to study medicine but had to give it up. She even laughed sometimes, soft and brief, like she wasn't used to hearing that sound herself. Tristan never interrupted. But he remembered everything. One night, as she set the bowl down, he noticed the faint bruise along her wrist. Not fresh. But not old enough to ignore. "What happened?" he asked. Rosalie glanced down, then casually pulled her sleeve over it. "Nothing." That answer. He didn't like it. Later that night, after she left, Tristan sat in the dark, his expression no longer passive. The softness that had started to form in his presence vanished, replaced by something colder. Sharper. He reached for his phone. One call. That was all it took. "Find out who's been bothering her," he said quietly. No name needed. No explanation. The line went silent for a second, then a voice responded, respectful, immediate. "Understood." Across the city, things began to move. The next evening, Rosalie returned as usual, unaware of what had already changed around her. She knocked, stepped inside, placed the food down, but this time, something felt different. She couldn't explain it. Just a feeling. Tristan watched her carefully. "They bother you often?" he asked. Rosalie paused for a moment, then forced a small shrug. "It's nothing I can't handle." That wasn't an answer. But he didn't push. Instead, he picked up the bowl, taking a slow bite, as if the conversation meant nothing. But inside, he had already made a decision. The following night, the men who had been threatening Rosalie didn't show up. Not in the alley. Not outside her workplace. Not anywhere. Because somewhere far from her world, a message had already been delivered. Clear. Final. Stay away. Or disappear. Back in the apartment, Rosalie didn't know why things suddenly felt quieter. Safer. She walked home without looking over her shoulder for the first time in weeks. And for some reason, her thoughts drifted back to Tristan. That night, when she knocked, he opened the door before she could do it a second time. "You look less tired," he said. She blinked, slightly surprised. "Do I?" He didn't answer. But his gaze lingered a second longer than usual. Rosalie stepped inside, setting the bowl down, then hesitated. "Did something happen?" she asked. Tristan met her eyes. For a brief moment. There was something dangerous there. Something real. Then it disappeared. "No," he said calmly. She studied him for a second, like she didn't quite believe it, but she didn't push further. That wasn't who she was. Instead, she sat down across from him, resting her chin lightly in her hand. "You know," she said softly, "for someone who says so little, you notice a lot." A faint pause. "It's a habit," he replied. Rosalie smiled slightly. "Must be useful." Tristan looked at her. And for the first time, there was something close to honesty in his voice. "It is." Silence settled again, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was shared. Rosalie stood up after a while, brushing her hands lightly against her clothes. "You should rest more," she said. "You'll heal faster." Heal. That word lingered longer than it should have. As she turned to leave, Tristan spoke again. "Rosalie." She stopped, looking back. "If something happens," he said slowly, "you tell me." A pause. There was weight behind those words. More than concern. More than curiosity. Rosalie studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Okay." She didn't know why she said yes. Maybe because, for the first time in a long time, it felt like someone meant it. The door closed softly behind her. Tristan remained still for a moment. Then slowly, he stood up. No hesitation. No struggle. The crutch beside him stayed exactly where it was. And in the dim light of that quiet room, the truth finally surfaced. Tristan Wolfe was never broken. He was waiting. And anyone who touched her again would find out exactly what that meant. The rain started just after midnight. Not heavy at first, just a thin, cold drizzle that clung to the streets and turned every light into a blurred reflection. Southside Chicago always looked worse in the rain. Darker. Quieter. Like the city itself was holding something back. Rosalie pulled her jacket tighter as she stepped out of the convenience store, exhaustion weighing on every step. It had been a long shift, longer than usual, and all she wanted was to get home, collapse into bed, and steal a few hours of sleep before doing it all again. She didn't notice them at first. Not until she turned into the narrow alley that cut her walk in half. "Hey." The voice stopped her cold. She didn't turn immediately. Didn't have to. She already knew. Two men stepped out from the shadows behind her. Another from the front. Blocking the exit. Rosalie's grip tightened around her bag. "I told you," she said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady, "I'll get the money." One of them laughed. Low. Mocking. "We're done waiting." Her heartbeat quickened. Not panic. Not yet. Just calculation. "There's nothing left to take," she said. "Oh, there's always something," another one replied, stepping closer. The space around her shrank. The rain fell harder now, tapping against metal and concrete like a warning she couldn't escape. She took a step back. Then another. Nowhere to go. "Please," she said, quieter this time, not begging, just buying time. That's when one of them grabbed her arm. Hard. Pain shot through her wrist. "Let's not make this difficult." The sentence never finished. Because suddenly, everything changed. A sound. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just precise. A single step. Then another. Slow. Controlled. From the darkness behind them. The men turned instinctively. And froze. Because the man standing there wasn't supposed to exist. No crutch. No weakness. No hesitation. Just Tristan. Standing upright. Perfectly still. Rain sliding down his face, his expression unreadable, but his eyes. Cold. Deadly. Unforgiving. "Let her go," he said. Not loud. Not angry. Just final. The man holding Rosalie hesitated. Just for a second. Then laughed. Or what? That was the mistake. Tristan moved. Fast. Too fast. Before the man could react, Tristan's hand shot forward, grabbing his wrist and twisting it with brutal precision. A crack echoed through the alley, followed by a scream that was cut short just as quickly as it began. The others lunged. Wrong move. Tristan didn't step back. He stepped into them. Every movement clean. Efficient. No wasted energy. No hesitation. One down. Then another. The third tried to run. Didn't get far. Within seconds. It was over. The alley fell silent again. Only the sound of rain remained. Rosalie stood frozen. Breathing uneven. Eyes wide. Because the man in front of her was not the same man who sat quietly in that dim apartment, eating her food like he had nothing left. This man was something else entirely. Tristan turned to her slowly. The violence gone from his expression as quickly as it appeared. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Like nothing had just happened. Rosalie didn't answer. She couldn't. Her eyes dropped briefly. You lied, she said softly. It wasn't an accusation. Not fully. But it wasn't nothing either. Tristan didn't look away. I didn't tell you the truth, he replied. That wasn't better. But it was honest. A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of rain hitting concrete. Rosalie finally looked down at her wrist, the faint redness already forming where she had been grabbed. It hurt, but not enough to matter right now. You could have told me, she said. Tristan exhaled slowly. I couldn't. That answer carried weight. More than she expected. She looked back up at him. Why? Another pause. Because the real answer wasn't simple. Because the less you know, he said quietly, the safer you are. Rosalie let out a small breath, something between a laugh and disbelief. Safe, she repeated. You think I'm safe? That hit. Tristan's jaw tightened slightly. No, he said. A beat. Not anymore. The truth settled heavily between them. Rosalie wrapped her arms lightly around herself, not from the cold, but from the realization that everything had shifted. The small, quiet world she had been living in, barely holding together, had just collided with something far bigger. You're not just some guy hiding in an apartment, she said. No. Then what are you? Tristan didn't answer right away. Because once he said it, there was no going back. Instead, he stepped past her, scanning the alley one last time, making sure no one else was coming. Only when he was certain did he look at her again. Someone who made a lot of enemies, he said. That wasn't the full truth. But it was enough. Rosalie studied him for a long moment. Then nodded slowly. Okay. That was it. No panic. No questions. No running. Just acceptance. That surprised him more than anything else. You're not scared, he asked. Rosalie hesitated. Then gave a small, tired smile. I am, she admitted. A pause. But not of you. That. He didn't expect. Something shifted again. Deeper this time. Tristan looked at her differently now, not as someone he needed to protect from a distance, but as someone who had just stepped closer, by choice. Come on, he said quietly. I'll walk you back. They moved out of the alley together, side by side, the rain still falling around them. This time, Rosalie didn't keep her distance. She didn't step away. Because now, she knew what stood beside her. And somehow, that made her feel safer. When they reached the building, the hallway felt the same as always, dim, silent, but the space between their doors no longer felt like a boundary. Rosalie stopped before going inside. You should have told me sooner, she said softly. Tristan looked at her. I know. A pause. But you still opened the door for me, she added. Another pause. That wasn't a question. It was a reminder. Tristan's expression softened, just slightly. That was my mistake. Rosalie shook her head gently. No, she said. A small smile. Maybe it wasn't. For a moment. Neither of them moved. Then she turned, stepping into her apartment, the door closing quietly behind her. Tristan remained in the hallway. Still. Thinking. Because for the first time in a long time, he had something to lose. And that made everything more dangerous. Inside her room, Rosalie leaned back against the door, closing her eyes for a second. Her heart was still racing. Her thoughts still tangled. But one thing was clear. The man next door was not broken. And somehow, he had just become the most important part of her life. Whether she wanted that or not. After that night, nothing went back to the way it was. It couldn't. Some truths, once seen, never fade, and Rosalie had seen too much. The quiet man behind the door was gone. In his place stood someone far more dangerous, and far more real. The next few days were different. Subtly, but unmistakably. Rosalie still went to work, still moved through her exhausting routine, but something had changed in the space around her. The streets felt quieter. The alley where she had been cornered remained empty. The men who used to linger outside her workplace were gone, as if they had never existed. It should have felt like relief. But instead, it felt deliberate. Because it was. From the shadows of the city, Tristan watched everything. Not directly. Not visibly. But through people who owed him their lives. "She's clean," one of his men reported through the phone. "No one's getting close." "Make sure it stays that way," Tristan replied. His voice was calm. But there was no room for failure. Across the city, doors closed before they could open. Threats disappeared before they could form. Names that had once been whispered with confidence were now spoken with fear. All because of one thing. A girl who didn't even know the power protecting her. Back in the apartment, Rosalie noticed the silence more each day. And slowly, she began to understand. That night, when she knocked on Tristan's door, he opened it almost immediately. No hesitation. No distance. "You've been doing something," she said the moment she stepped in. Tristan didn't respond right away. He already knew this moment would come. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said calmly. Rosalie crossed her arms lightly, watching him. "You're a terrible liar." A small pause. Then, a faint shift in his expression. Almost a smile. "They're not bothering you anymore," she continued. "That doesn't just happen." Silence. Because she was right. Tristan set the glass in his hand down slowly. "No," he admitted. Rosalie exhaled softly, not surprised, but not entirely comfortable either. "You didn't have to do that." "I did." That answer came without hesitation. She frowned slightly. "Why?" Tristan looked at her. Really looked at her. "Because they hurt you." Simple. Direct. Undeniable. Rosalie's breath caught slightly. No one had ever said something like that to her before. Not like that. Not without expecting something in return. "You can't fix everything like this," she said quietly. "I'm not trying to fix everything," Tristan replied. A pause. "Just what matters." That was dangerous. Not just for him, but for her. Rosalie shook her head lightly, trying to push away the weight of his words. "You don't even know me that well." Tristan didn't look away. "I know enough." Silence settled again. Heavier this time. Because they both felt it. Something was growing between them. Not sudden. Not dramatic. But real. And real things came with consequences. Later that night, long after Rosalie had gone back to her room, Tristan stood by the window, his expression darker than before. The calm around her wasn't permanent. He knew that. Because the moment he moved, the moment he protected her, he exposed something. Himself. And somewhere else in the city. That mattered. "Are you sure it's him?" a voice asked over a dimly lit room, far from Southside. A man nodded slowly. "We lost 3 men in one night." Clean. Precise. A pause. "That's not coincidence." Silence. Then. A name. Tristan Wolfe. The room shifted. Tension rising instantly. "I thought he was dead." "So did everyone else." Another pause. Longer. More dangerous. "Find him," the voice said coldly. And just like that, the war he tried to leave behind started moving again. Back in the apartment, Tristan closed his eyes for a brief moment. Not out of weakness, but calculation. She placed the food down, then sat across from him without asking. You know, she said lightly, most people would run by now. Tristan's gaze lifted slowly to meet hers. You're not most people. That answer lingered longer than it should have. Rosalie looked away first, a faint smile touching her lips before fading just as quickly. Maybe I should be. Silence. Because that was the truth. Before Tristan could respond, his phone vibrated. Once. That was all it took for the atmosphere to shift. He didn't check it immediately, but his eyes darkened slightly. Rosalie noticed. What is it? Nothing. That was a lie. And this time, she knew it. Tristan. He exhaled slowly, then picked up the phone, glancing at the message. Just one line. They found you. His expression didn't change. But something behind his eyes did. The past had arrived. He stood up. Stay here tonight, he said suddenly. Rosalie blinked. What? Don't go back to your room. Her heart skipped slightly, not from fear, but from the way he said it. Firm. Final. Why? She asked quietly. A pause. Because the truth would change everything. They know I'm here, he said. Silence. Rosalie felt the weight of those words settle in her chest. And that means? Tristan looked at her. This time, there was no distance. No walls. It means, he said slowly, you're not safe anymore. That hit harder than anything else. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then. A sound. Footsteps. Not in the room. Outside. More than one. Rosalie's breath caught. Tristan. He didn't respond. Because he already knew. They had come faster than expected. The hallway floor creaked under the weight of approaching steps. Low voices. Controlled. Careful. Not random. Not careless. Professional. Tristan moved instantly, his entire presence shifting in a way Rosalie had never fully seen before. Cold. Focused. Deadly. Lock the door behind me, he said. Her eyes widened. What? No. Do it. There was no room to argue. Before she could say anything else, he was already moving. The door opened. Then closed behind him. And just like that, he was gone. Rosalie stood frozen for half a second. Then rushed forward, locking the door with shaking hands. Outside. Everything went silent. Too silent. Then. A sound. A body hitting the wall. A muffled grunt. Another impact. Fast. Violent. Controlled. Rosalie pressed her hand against the door, her heart pounding in her chest, every instinct telling her not to open it. But every part of her wanting to. Then. Silence again. A long, heavy silence. Seconds passed. Maybe minutes. Then. A knock. Soft. Rosalie. His voice. She didn't hesitate this time. The door unlocked. Opened. And there he was. Standing. Unshaken. But not untouched. A faint line of blood traced along his knuckles. His breathing steady. His eyes. Still sharp. Rosalie stared at him. How many? A pause. Enough. That answer said everything. Fear should have been the first thing she felt. But it wasn't. Instead. It was something else. Something deeper. Because now she understood. The man in front of her wasn't just dangerous. He was a war. That had just come to her door. And there was no walking away from it anymore. The hallway smelled faintly of iron and rain. Rosalie didn't need to step outside to know what had happened. She could see it in the way Tristan stood there, too calm, too controlled, like the violence had never really left him, only gone quiet for a while. She closed the door behind him slowly. "You're bleeding," she said. "It's nothing." That answer came too easily. Rosalie stepped closer anyway, her eyes scanning his hands, his sleeve, the faint marks he clearly wasn't going to acknowledge. "Sit down," she said, more firmly this time. Tristan hesitated. Not because he couldn't, but because no one had told him what to do in a very long time. "Fine." He sat. Rosalie moved quickly, grabbing what little she had, some clean cloth, a small kit she kept for her mother's care. Her hands were steady, even if her mind wasn't. "Give me your hand." He did. Silence filled the room again, but it wasn't the same silence as before. This one was heavier. Closer. Charged with something neither of them could ignore anymore. "You should have told me it was this serious," she said quietly, cleaning the blood from his knuckles. Tristan watched her. "You wouldn't have stayed." Rosalie didn't look up. "You don't know that." A pause. "No," he admitted. "But I wasn't willing to risk it." That was the truth. Her fingers slowed slightly, just for a second, before continuing. "You don't get to decide that for me." He didn't respond. Because she was right. Before either of them could say anything else, his phone vibrated again. This time, he answered immediately. "What?" A voice on the other end, urgent, low. "They know about the girl." Everything in the room stopped. Tristan's eyes darkened instantly. "How much?" "Enough. They're already moving." Silence. Then, the line went dead. Rosalie looked up. She didn't need to hear the other side to understand. "It's me, isn't it?" Tristan didn't answer. That was answer enough. Her chest tightened slightly, but she forced herself to stay steady. "So what happens now?" Tristan stood. This time, there was no hesitation. No attempt to soften anything. "Now," he said, "you don't stay here." Rosalie blinked. "What?" "They won't stop," he continued. "Not after tonight." "I'm not leaving my mom," she shot back instantly. "You don't have a choice." The words hit hard. Rosalie stepped back slightly, shaking her head. "No. You don't get to just come into my life and start making decisions for me." Tristan moved closer. Not aggressive, but immovable. "If you stay," he said quietly, "they will use you." A pause. "They will hurt you to get to me." The air between them tightened. Rosalie's voice dropped. "Then maybe you should leave." That was the first time she pushed him away. It landed. Tristan's expression didn't change. But something in his eyes did. "You don't mean that." "Don't I?" she replied. Silence. Because part of her did. And part of her didn't. Then, a sound. Not in the hallway this time. Outside. Engines. More than one. Tristan turned toward the window instantly. His voice dropped to something colder. "They're here." Rosalie's heart skipped. "Already?" "They don't waste time." Lights flashed briefly through the cracks of the blinds. Shadows moving. Fast. Coordinated. Not random. This wasn't intimidation. This was extraction. "You need to move." "Now," Tristan said. Rosalie grabbed her bag instinctively, her mind racing, her body moving before the fear could catch up. "What about my mom?" "I already sent people," he replied. "She's being moved." Rosalie froze. "You what?" "No one touches your family," he said. That answer left no room for argument. They're following us, she said, her voice tight. I know. Tristan didn't look back. He didn't need to. Take the south exit, he told the driver. That road's blocked, the driver replied quickly. Not anymore. There was no doubt in his voice. The car sped through the streets, weaving through traffic, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold and white as the distance between them and their pursuers shifted with every turn. Another gunshot. This time. It hit the car. Rosalie gasped as the sound echoed too close, instinctively ducking lower. Stay down, Tristan said, one hand braced against the seat as he glanced back briefly. His eyes narrowed. Calculating. They're not trying to scare us, he said. They're trying to stop us. The car turned sharply, tires skidding slightly as they cut into a narrower street. Too narrow. One of the cars behind them tried to follow. Clipped the corner. Lost control. A crash echoed behind them. But the second car kept coming. Closer now. More aggressive. Tristan, the driver started. I see it. The man behind the wheel exhaled sharply. We're not going to outrun them like this. A pause. Then Tristan made a decision. Don't. Rosalie looked at him, confused. What? Tristan reached forward, grabbing something from beneath the seat. A gun. Clean. Simple. Final. Her breath caught. Keep driving, he said. Before she could react. Before she could say anything. He opened the door. Wait. Too late. Tristan stepped out. The car was still moving. He hit the ground hard, rolling once before rising smoothly, like the impact meant nothing. Behind him, the pursuing car sped forward, closing the distance fast. And then it slowed. Because now they weren't chasing prey anymore. They were facing him. Tristan stood in the middle of the road, rain falling around him, his expression completely still. Then he moved. One shot. The driver's side window shattered. The car swerved. Another shot. Tire blown. Control lost. The vehicle spun violently, crashing into the side of the street with a deafening impact. Silence followed. Heavy. Final. The rain continued to fall. Tristan lowered the gun slowly. Behind him, the black car had stopped. Rosalie pushed the door open, stepping out, her breath still uneven, her mind struggling to catch up with what she had just seen. She started, but the words didn't come. Because there was no simple way to say it. Tristan turned toward her. The same man. But not the same at all. It's over, he said. Rosalie looked at the wrecked car behind him. Then back at him. No, she said quietly. A pause. I think it's just starting. Their eyes met. And this time, neither of them looked away. Because now, there was no illusion left. No distance. No denial. She was in his world. And there was no turning back. The city slowly faded behind them. Streetlights turned into distant glows, noise into silence, chaos into something quieter, but not peaceful. Not really. Because no matter how far they drove, what followed them wasn't just cars or gunfire. It was history. The safe house stood alone at the edge of the city, hidden behind layers of anonymity. From the outside, it looked ordinary, just another building among many, but everything about it was designed to disappear. No signs. No patterns. No trace. The car rolled to a stop. Inside, Tristan said. Rosalie stepped out slowly, her legs still unsteady, her mind still catching up with everything that had just happened. The air felt different here, colder, quieter, like even the world itself was holding its breath. Inside, the lights flickered on automatically. Clean. Minimal. Controlled. Safe. At least. That's what it was supposed to be. Rosalie stood in the center of the room, looking around, trying to process it all. Just hours ago, she had been living a life that barely held together. Now, she was here. You can rest, Tristan said, setting his gun down on the table as if it were nothing more than a set of keys. Rosalie let out a quiet breath. Rest, she repeated softly. She turned to him. Her eyes sharper now. More aware. People are trying to kill you, she said. A pause. And now they're trying to kill me. Silence. Tristan didn't deny it. Yeah, he said. That honesty hit harder than anything else. Rosalie ran a hand through her hair, pacing slightly now, her thoughts finally catching up with her emotions. You said this would keep me safe, she continued, her voice tighter. But this doesn't feel safe. It's safer than anywhere else, Tristan replied. That's not the same thing. He didn't answer. Because she was right. The room fell quiet again, but this time it wasn't calm, it was heavy, filled with everything neither of them had said yet. Rosalie stopped pacing. Looked at him. Really looked this time. Who are you? She asked. Not softly. Not carefully. Direct. Because she deserved that much. Tristan didn't respond immediately. He leaned back slightly against the table, arms resting at his sides, his gaze steady, but distant. My name is Tristan Wolfe, he said slowly. The name meant nothing to her. Not yet. I built something, he continued. A network. Power. Control. A pause. People wanted it. Another pause. Longer this time. So they tried to take it. Rosalie's chest tightened slightly. And the woman? She asked quietly. The one who betrayed you. That. Hit differently. Tristan's expression didn't change. But something behind his eyes shifted. She wasn't supposed to, he said. Simple. But not simple at all. Rosalie studied him. You trusted her. A beat. Yes. That word carried more weight than anything else he had said. Silence followed. Deep. Unavoidable. Rosalie walked closer, slower now. Not afraid. Not anymore. And now you don't trust anyone, she said. Tristan didn't answer. Because that was obvious. She stopped just a few steps away from him. So why me? That question. He didn't have an easy answer for. His eyes met hers. And for the first time, there was no distance. No mask. No control. I don't know, he admitted. Honest. Raw. Rosalie let out a quiet breath, something soft breaking through the tension. That's new, she said. A faint, almost invisible shift crossed his expression. Yes, he replied. Another silence settled, but this one felt different. Closer. Warmer. Not safe. But real. Rosalie sat down slowly, exhaustion finally catching up to her body. Everything hurt. Everything felt too fast. Too much. I didn't choose this, she murmured. I know. A pause. But I'm here anyway. Tristan watched her. Carefully. You can still leave, he said. She let out a quiet, almost amused breath. Where? She asked. That. He didn't have an answer for. Rosalie leaned back slightly, closing her eyes for a moment. If I stay, she said softly, this doesn't get easier, does it? No. No hesitation. She nodded slowly. Then opened her eyes again. Good, she said. Tristan frowned slightly. Because I don't think I want easy anymore. That changed something. Not in the room. In him. For the first time since everything began. He wasn't just he checked the device. A message. No words. Just a location. And a symbol. Rosalie watched his face carefully. What is it? A pause. Then. Someone from my past, he said. That wasn't vague. That was deliberate. Rosalie stood up slowly. The one who betrayed you. Tristan didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence confirmed it. Hours later, the sky had turned darker again, clouds gathering like something inevitable. The car moved through the city in silence, tension thick between them, but not empty. Rosalie sat beside him, watching the way his focus never broke, the way every movement felt calculated. This wasn't the man she had met with a crutch and quiet eyes. This was the man he had always been. They arrived at a private rooftop. Empty. Too empty. That's a trap, Rosalie said immediately. Yes. And we're still going up? Tristan stepped out of the car. Yes. There was no hesitation. Rosalie followed anyway. Because leaving was no longer an option she believed in. The rooftop door opened with a low creak. Wind rushed in, sharp and cold. And there she was. Celeste. Standing at the edge of the building like she had been waiting for this moment. She didn't turn immediately. Didn't need to. I was wondering how long it would take, she said softly. Her voice. Too calm. Too familiar. Tristan stopped a few steps behind her. You should have stayed gone. Celeste smiled faintly, finally turning to face him. Time hadn't changed her. But something else had. I thought you were dead, she said, her eyes scanning him slowly. Everyone did. I should have been. A pause. Then her gaze shifted. To Rosalie. And something in her expression darkened. So this is why you came back, she said. Rosalie didn't step back. Didn't hide. I'm not part of this, she said. Celeste smiled. But there was no warmth in it. You are now. The wind picked up, pulling at their clothes, at the silence between them, at everything that had been left unsaid for too long. Tristan stepped forward slightly. Say what you came to say. Celeste's eyes returned to him. And for a brief moment. Something real flickered there. You trusted me, she said quietly. Tristan didn't respond. You built everything with me, she continued. And you never once asked why I stayed. A pause. Because I thought you didn't need a reason. That was the truth. Celeste let out a soft breath, almost like a laugh. That was your mistake. Silence. Because they both knew it. Then her expression shifted again. Harder now. Colder. They're coming for you, she said. Not just your enemies. Everyone. Tristan didn't move. Let them. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You still don't understand, she said. A step closer. This isn't about power anymore. A pause. It's about ending you. The air tightened instantly. Rosalie felt it. Even without knowing everything. She felt it. Because this wasn't just a warning. It was a promise. Celeste's gaze flicked to her one last time. And she'll be the easiest way to do it. That changed everything. Tristan's expression went completely still. Dangerously still. Don't, he said. Not loud. But absolute. Celeste held his gaze for a second longer. Then smiled faintly. Too late. A sound echoed. Not from her. From below. Multiple doors opening. Footsteps. Fast. Coordinated. Rosalie's breath caught. Tristan. He didn't look away from Celeste. Because now. He understood. This meeting. was never about closure. It was about bait. And they had just walked into it. The sound of footsteps rose fast. Too fast. Too many. From below the rooftop door, from the stairwell, from every direction that should have been empty, men were coming up with purpose, with precision, with the kind of coordination that only meant one thing. This wasn't a warning. This was an execution. Rosalie felt it instantly, the shift in the air, the tightening pressure in her chest. Every instinct told her to move, to run, but there was nowhere to go. Not up here. Not surrounded like this. Tristan didn't look at the door. Didn't look at the edges. He looked only at Celeste. You set this up, he said. Not a question. Celeste didn't deny it. I gave you a chance, she replied quietly. To stay gone. A pause. You didn't take it. The wind howled across the rooftop, pulling at everything between them, words, memories, whatever had once been real. Then, the door burst open. Armed men flooded onto the rooftop in a controlled wave, spreading out instantly, weapons raised, positions taken like they had rehearsed this moment over and over again. Rosalie's breath caught. Trapped. No exits. No cover. Every angle sealed. Stay behind me, Tristan said. She didn't argue. Didn't hesitate. Because now, she knew exactly what he was capable of. And what was coming. The first shot rang out. Then everything exploded. Gunfire tore through the air, sharp and deafening, bullets cutting across the rooftop in a storm of chaos. Tristan moved instantly, pulling Rosalie down just as the space where they had been standing erupted with impact. Move, he ordered. They shifted fast, using the low concrete edge for cover as more shots rained down. Rosalie's hands shook, but her mind didn't freeze. Not this time. She watched him. The way he moved. The way he calculated. Then she followed. Left side, she said suddenly, spotting movement before he did. Tristan reacted without question, turning just as a man came around the corner. One shot. Down. He glanced at her briefly. Not surprised. Just noting. They were outnumbered. Badly. More men spread across the rooftop, tightening the circle, closing the distance slowly, methodically. This wasn't rushed. This was controlled pressure. They wanted him contained. Alive. Or not. Tristan's jaw tightened slightly. Stay low, he said. Rosalie nodded, her breathing steadying despite everything. Then, she saw it. Near the far side of the rooftop. A car. Not random. Not abandoned. Waiting. There, she said, pointing quickly. Tristan followed her gaze. An exit. A narrow one. But enough. He made the decision instantly. We run. What? Rosalie looked at him. We don't stay here, he said. We break through. Another wave of gunfire cut across them. Closer now. On my signal, he continued. Rosalie's heart pounded. But she nodded. Because there was no other option. 3 seconds. 2. 1. Now. They moved. Fast. Explosive. Tristan stepped out first, firing with precision, forcing the nearest attackers back just enough to create space. Rosalie followed close behind, staying exactly where he had told her, within reach, within protection. Shots echoed around them. Too close. Too loud. A bullet grazed past her shoulder. She didn't stop. Didn't look back. Because now, she trusted him. They reached the car. Tristan yanked the door open. Pushed her inside. Then turned. One last time. Because Celeste was still there. Standing exactly where she had been. Watching. Their eyes met. No words. No hesitation. I'm okay, she whispered. She wasn't. Not even close. Tristan's world narrowed in an instant. The road. The enemies. The plan. None of it mattered. Stay with me, he said, his voice lower now, but sharper than ever. I am, she murmured, though her head leaned back slightly, her strength already fading. Another car closed in behind them. Gunfire continued. But Tristan didn't react the same way anymore. Because now, this wasn't about escaping. This was personal. He slammed the brakes. Hard. The car behind them didn't have time to react. It crashed forward. And Tristan was already moving. He stepped out before the vehicle had fully stopped. Gun in hand. Eyes cold. Completely gone. The world slowed. Not for him. For everyone else. Because what stood there now was not a man running. It was a man who had just been pushed too far. The first attacker stepped out. Didn't get a second step. One shot. Down. Another turned. Too late. Two more shots. Precise. Final. No hesitation. No mercy. The last one tried to run. Tristan didn't chase. He didn't need to. One bullet ended it. Silence fell again. Heavy. Absolute. The rain began to fall once more. Tristan stood there for a second. Breathing steady. Expression empty. Then. He turned. Back to the car. Back to her. He opened the door instantly. Rosalie was barely conscious now. Her breathing shallow. Her hands slipping from the wound. No, he said under his breath. Not loud. Not desperate. But final. He pulled her closer carefully, pressing his hand against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Stay with me, he said again. Her eyes opened slightly. Weak. But still there. You're not as calm as you pretend, she whispered faintly. That broke something. Just for a second. Tristan exhaled sharply, his forehead pressing briefly against hers. Don't do this, he said. Her lips curved just slightly. I said I'm staying, didn't I? Her voice faded. And for the first time, Tristan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Real fear. Not for himself. For her. He moved fast, lifting her carefully, placing her back into the car. Hospital? The driver asked. No, Tristan said immediately. Too exposed. Too dangerous. Safe house, he ordered. Call the doctor. Now. The car sped off again. Inside. Everything felt smaller. Quieter. Too quiet. Tristan kept pressure on her wound, his hands steady, but his eyes. Not anymore. Because now. He understood something he had avoided from the very beginning. This wasn't just protection. This wasn't just responsibility. This was something else. Something dangerous. Because if she died, everything he had built, everything he was, wouldn't matter anymore. The safe house doors slammed open before the car had fully stopped. Everything moved at once. Fast. Urgent. Controlled chaos. Clear the room. Tristan's voice cut through the air, sharp enough to leave no room for delay. The moment he stepped out with Rosalie in his arms, the entire space shifted around him. People moved without question, without hesitation, because they knew that tone. It wasn't a command. It was a warning. Doctor's on the way, one of his men said quickly. Not fast enough, Tristan replied. He laid her down carefully on the table, his hands still pressing against the wound, blood already staining his sleeves, his fingers, everything. Rosalie didn't react. Her breathing. Too shallow. Her skin. Too pale. Rosalie, he said, lower now. No response. Something inside him tightened. Rosalie. Still nothing. For a moment. Everything around him blurred. Not the room. Not the people. Just the control he had built for years. Slipping. Stay with me, he said again, this time closer, his voice no longer just controlled, but strained. A weak sound. Barely there. But enough. Her eyes fluttered open slightly. Unfocused. Fading. You're still here, she whispered. Tristan exhaled sharply, relief hitting too fast, too hard. I'm not going anywhere. That wasn't something he said lightly. Her lips moved again, but the words didn't come out clearly this time. Then. Footsteps. The doctor rushed in, already moving, already assessing, already taking control of the situation. We're losing time, he said. Tristan didn't step back. Move, the doctor repeated. A pause. Just 1 second. Then Tristan stepped aside. Not because he wanted to. Because he had to. The room shifted into something clinical, precise. Tools, pressure, instructions, everything moving in perfect coordination while the world outside remained completely irrelevant. Tristan stood just a few steps away. Watching. Every second stretched. Every breath mattered. Blood. Too much. She'll make it, he asked. The doctor didn't answer immediately. That silence said enough. Tristan's jaw tightened. Do your job, he said quietly. Not loud. But dangerous. The doctor didn't look up. I am. Another second passed. Then another. Time stopped meaning anything. Until. Finally. She's stable. The words hit like impact. Not relief. Not yet. But enough to breathe again. Tristan didn't move. Didn't speak. Because something inside him had already shifted too far to go back. The room slowly cleared, one by one, until it was just him and her again. Machines. Silence. Soft breathing. Rosalie lay still, her face pale but no longer fading, her chest rising and falling just enough to prove she was still there. Alive. Tristan stepped closer slowly. For a moment. He just stood there. Then. He sat beside her. Not like a man in control. Like someone who had just come too close to losing everything. His hand reached out, hesitating for the first time. Then gently resting against hers. You weren't supposed to be part of this, he said quietly. No response. You were supposed to stay out of it. His thumb brushed slightly against her fingers. Warm. Still there. A long pause. Then. The truth. I should have walked away. His voice lowered. But I didn't. Another pause. Because now. He knew why. I don't want to. That was the first real admission. Not strategy. Not protection. Something deeper. Something he couldn't control. So you don't get to leave, he added quietly. Not a command. A confession. Silence filled the room again. But this time. It wasn't empty. It held everything he hadn't said before. And everything that would change because of it. Outside. The war was still moving. Still growing. Still coming. But inside. For the first time. Tristan Wolfe wasn't thinking about power. He was thinking about one thing. Her. And what he was willing to become. To make sure she never slipped away again. 3 months later. Chicago felt different. Not quieter. Not safer. but rearranged. Rosalie stood at the edge of the shore, the wind catching lightly in her hair, her expression calm in a way it had never been before. "You really bought an island," she said. Tristan stood behind her, hands in his pockets, watching her instead of the horizon. It seemed easier than dealing with people. She laughed softly. "That's your solution to everything?" A pause. "Not everything." Rosalie turned slightly. "And this?" she asked. That question meant more than it sounded. Tristan stepped closer. "This," he said quietly, "is the only thing I didn't plan." Silence. But not empty. Rosalie studied him for a moment. Then smiled. Good. Because neither of them needed a plan anymore. The ceremony was small. Private. Real. No politics. No power plays. No shadows watching from a distance. Just two people. Who had survived everything meant to break them. Standing side by side. Tristan didn't say much. He never did. But when he looked at her, it said everything. And when Rosalie took his hand, she didn't hesitate. Because she knew exactly who he was. And chose him anyway. Months later, the city still whispered his name. Still feared it. Still respected it. But he wasn't there anymore. Not in the same way. Because the man who once ruled everything had chosen something else. A quieter life. A different kind of power. Not control. But protection. Not fear. But love. Rosalie rested her head lightly against his shoulder, her hand resting over her stomach, a soft smile forming as she looked out at the ocean. "Do you think you'll be a good father?" she asked. A pause. Tristan looked at her. Then at the horizon. "Better than the one I had." That was enough. More than enough. The past didn't disappear. It never did. But it didn't control him anymore. Because in the end, Tristan Wolfe didn't win by destroying his enemies. He won. By choosing something they never could. A life worth protecting. And a love. That changed everything.